Salofalava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuiki. Coming up.
It's not about us not listening, as I said.
Fiji's Finance Minister defends MP's salary increase. Also, New Zealand's Foreign Minister leads another delegation to the Pacific. And
amazing game, yeah. Very proud of the team.
New Zealand secures a 6th OFC Nations title. Fiji's Finance Minister has defended members of Parliament's salary increases in light of public opposition. The national budget released last week Friday addressed the serious skilled workers shortages, but it also provided civil servants a large boost in wages, as well as a salary increase to MPs of 4.2 million Fijian dollars across the board. Alicia Foon spoke with Finance Minister Biman Prasad and began by asking him if the budget goes far enough to address the cost of living and minimum wage.
Let's talk about the minimum wage. In 2018, you called for this to be $5, which it now is. That was 6 years ago. And so how does that meet the needs of people?
Yeah, that's a bit of a naive way to put it. Of course, the critics are forgetting that, yes, in 2018, 2016, 17, 18, things were looking better when we could have gone on to $5 in a progressive way. And what I suggested in 2018 was that the minimum wage should be raised to $5 in a progressive manner. Obviously, we were not in government. It didn't happen. And in 2019, the economy had contracted. And when we were hit by COVID, we ended up with a ranking of a 4th largest contraction of all the economies in the world. And so post-COVID, 2022, while the recovery was good, 2023, transition happening, in terms of people getting back to the jobs, small, medium enterprises, getting back on their feet. And therefore, we have taken a very considered approach where we have increased the minimum wage from $4 to $5. It's a significant increase based on the economic conditions and based on how we see, growth tapering off this year because of headwinds internationally. So I think, it's a very considered, timely movement in the minimum wages.
But that increase is happening over 2 parts, 50 cents at a time, isn't it?
Yeah, we are giving space for employers, especially small, medium enterprises to adjust. So we're moving to $4.50 from 1st of August immediately next month. And we're giving about 9 months for employers and small, medium enterprises to adjust, and $5 effective 1st of April.
Okay. There was also public outcry and disappointment about MPs' salary increases still happening despite there being a lot of opposition to this. So just over 4 million across the board. You've said multiple times that this is now a government that is open to criticism and democracy. So why did you not listen to the people of Fiji around these salary increases?
Well, no, it's not about us not listening. As I said, there was difference of opinion within Parliament and within government, as you know very well, that we as a coalition partner did not vote for the increase in salaries. What I said during the budget speech was a lot of people don't know that when we came into government during COVID, all MPs and ministers took a pay cut of 20%. And when we came into government, we did not restore that. So the new pay structure, if you adjust that 20%, if you take that into account and then look at the increase from there, it's just 1.2 million. If you don't restore the 20%, then it's 4.2 million, as opposed to what was put out by the media initially, 8.1 million. So all I did was explain the cost. And what I said also, and government agrees, we've listened to the people, we've listened to the criticism, that going forward, we need to set up a truly independent emoluments committee made up of experts, not members of Parliament, who would then make the appropriate recommendation for any future review or changes in the perks and salaries of the ministers.
How does this salary increase support the poor and vulnerable?
The salary increase in terms of what the civil service got, in terms of what the minimum wage is now, and we are also saying that because we've been losing a lot of people to places like Australia and New Zealand, the demand for labour has also increased. And so in the formal sector, there's already an increase of about 10 to 14% in salaries and wages. And so we are adding to that by addressing the fundamental issue of raising income. So if you look at our sugarcane farmers, our rice farmers, we have put in policies. We've provided, social wage subsidies for farmers. The highest ever cane price was received by farmers last year. It's even going higher this year to about $102 per ton. And in Fiji, we have kept 21 basic food items zero rated. There is no VAT on those 21 items. Yet the prices of some of those items keep going up because some of those items are imported from places like New Zealand, Australia, and your prices are astronomical.
Yeah, but my question was, how does the MP's salary increase support the poor and vulnerable?
No, that's. I think that's in some ways a question. I mean, if you look at 1.2 million or 4.2 million, as opposed to the fundamental things that we are doing in an economy, as I said, that the issue could have been communicated better. That's what I said in Parliament when this motion was brought into Parliament. But again, that's a decision of the Parliament, and we are moving ahead with the measures that we put in this budget to support the poor and the vulnerable.
New Zealand's Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Affairs Minister, Winston Peters, is off to the Solomon Islands today and will meet with newly elected Prime Minister Jeremiah Manele for the second time. Mr. Peters will later travel with a high-level political delegation to Nauru on Wednesday and Niue on Thursday. Caleb Fotheringham, who is travelling with the group, joins me. Kia ora, Caleb. What will Mr. Peters try to achieve in his latest Pacific trip?
Kia ora sana. So Winston Peters, he's on his way to Solomon Islands today, and he's bringing a broad delegation with him. So that's Labour and the Greens on the opposition side, as well as people within his government. He then is on to Nauru on Wednesday and Niue Thursday, where he will meet with both of the nation's leaders. And what's interesting about the Solomon Islands trip, this is the second time Mr. Peters will meet newly elected Prime Minister Jeremiah Manele, which is pretty impressive considering he's only had the job since May. But Mr. Manele seems to be very popular at the moment. He's been seen by Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong, Washington's Papua New Guinea-based ambassador, China's special envoy to the Pacific, and Japan's ambassador to the Pacific. They've all visited him, and of course some of this is just because he's Prime Minister, and when someone in the region becomes Prime Minister, all their friends want to see them. But keeping in mind Solomon Islands has been the centre of geopolitical competition since 2019. It's a little bit different, and talking to academics in this area, it's likely a large amount of these visitors are there also, they're also related to this geopolitical struggle, and they're saying if Manele is going to be different to Prime Minister Sogavare, who was very pro-China and at times even, I was told, had even anti-Western rhetoric. So they're saying if Manele is going to be different and if they can form a bit of a different relationship with him.
And what about Nauru and Niue?
In Nauru, Mr. Peters has bilateral meetings with President David Ariang and the foreign minister there. And in the background, there's quite a bit going on in Nauru. So there's almost 100 asylum seekers there at the moment. So this is off being to zero in June last year, and then people arriving again in September. So Australia is using that detention centre again. And the nation has also switched ties with Taiwan, switched ties from Taiwan for China. And this was immediately after Taiwan's presidential election in January. So it happened like that. And also happening is Baron Wanga started his tenure as the Secretary of General. Baron Wanga started his tenure as the new Secretary General of the Pacific Islands Forum. So there's a bit going on in Nauru, and that's all happening in the background. And Mr. Peters, I'm sure, is going to be asking questions about a few of those issues.
Can you explain what's happening in Niue?
Yeah, so in Niue, Mr. Peters is visiting off the back of Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, who announced a $20 million investment package in renewable energy, and that just happened last month. So Mr. Peters, he's going to be there, and he's going to lead a groundbreaking ceremony for the energy investment that New Zealand has announced. And Mr. Peters is also obviously going to have bilateral meetings with Premier Dalton Tangalangi when he is there too. And in the background, what's happening with Niue is they're celebrating 50 years of free association with New Zealand.
Just going back to Nauru, I understand that there's a visa for journalists, but how did you manage to waive that?
Yeah, so there's an $8,000 Australian visa fee application for journalists. So it's a huge amount. We wouldn't have been able to cover that. But thankfully, it has been waived. And I'm guessing that has something to do with being part of Winston Peters' delegation. But even with that being waived, you can see just on the media plan that Nauru doesn't really want media there. We're not as involved as in compared to the Solomon Islands and compared to Niue, where it seems like they're pretty happy for us to be everywhere. Nauru doesn't seem to have that. We're not included in every little bit of detail. We will, I believe, be able to fire some questions to the president, but that's going to be limited to 2 questions per journalist. So even that is quite restricted.
The deeper importance of Indigenous guardianship was at the forefront of a forum held by Neatero in Hawaii. Discussions revolved around the value of better understanding cultural identities and how this can contribute to revitalizing cultural practices region-wide. Pacific Strategy Advisor Paul Rowan has noticed a dilution of cultural practices over the years and says the time to act is now.
What we're doing here is really bringing to life the fact that culture is not something that's just performed. It's something that lives. It's something that we live from. Most of it is locked up in place and in our entire peoples, wherever they are, and what they do. And this event was really recognizing that there was a lot of clarity in thinking about who we are as Pacific Islanders 40, 50 years ago when our countries became independent. But a lot of that clarity has slowly ebbed away. And this is a start of bringing that tide back in and lifting not just identity, but country, but people, but place, all of those things at the same time.
That's really interesting. And why? Why is this so important to talk about?
We have an entire region. You know, if you take the seas and the lands into account, it's an enormous region. It's the size of the US and China put together. All of this vast expanse was occupied by nations, by societies, multicultural ones, that covered huge areas, that interacted for hundreds of centuries. And a lot of the things that are happening now, our modern countries or territories are trying to do things. We're finding maybe that we haven't been really looking to those foundations. We've been maybe starting from too shallow an understanding of who we are. And so this was a conversation that has been happening and building. And this was the time to take that understanding, bring it forward, share it amongst ourselves, and see whether it has resonance wider than the people who've been talking about it for a little while.
What's some of the plans then for the way forward from here?
Taking this forward is about recognizing how it resonates with our different peoples, following that resonance, following that responsiveness. Because, in fact, that's how we even got here. From an initial very small conversation, when we talk about Tok Story or Talanoa, it's always a circle. The circle has been steadily widening, and it's up to the people who participate to find who else they want to bring in. And that's really what I think is going to be the process going forward. Very, very often you have gatherings and you're not sure if what you're proposing to talk about is going to catch. This was an occasion where it looked as if it would, but how it's actually connected and caught has been, better than expectations. So it's always a good thing.
Held off the back of FESPAC, the forum was attended by nationals from across the Pacific, including the Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea and Vanuatu. The national football coach of Vanuatu says he's extremely proud and the country should be proud of the team's performance in the grand final of the OFC Nations Cup on Sunday. New Zealand defeated the hosts 3-0 to secure their 6th OFC Nations title, but were held to a 1-goal scoreline until the final minutes of the match by a determined Vanuatu side. Koroi Hawkins reports.
Vanuatu coach Julian Schmeling says despite letting in an early goal, his Chargers maintained their nerve and did their country proud for most of the match.
Amazing game, yeah. Very proud of the team, the way they behaved, the way they managed the game. Almost 90 minutes was outstanding. Competing with New Zealand, making me feel very proud of them, and they needed to be proud of themselves. The nation of Vanuatu need to be proud.
A major turning point in the match for Vanuatu came in the 75th minute with Timothy Bule sent off after a second yellow card. New Zealand coach Darren Baisley says he was glad the referee put his foot down as there were some heavy challenges coming in, but overall he said it was a great game.
It was a really exciting game, a massive crowd, and I thought we were pretty good again. We scored an early goal and maybe thought we could go on and do well there from that moment. And I think we came up against a team full of heart in Vanuatu. They played some good football, but they didn't really hurt us. We were in control most of it, but we didn't put them away, and they stayed in the game, and that's credit to Vanuatu.
Early in the losers' final, Tahiti beat Fiji 2-1 to secure third place, ending a disappointing knockout round for the Bula Boys, who had come through the group stage unbeaten.
That's Pacific Waves for today. To listen back, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, Tō whā sui fua.